Welcome back to the Family Ties podcast. Hi you all, Kelly Ritchie here. Thank you for joining me today. Before we get started, I'd like to invite each and every one of you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, like my videos, and share your thoughts and comments with me. And for those of you listening to the podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you find your pods. I welcome your feedback as well as your suggestions and case recommendations. So please post away. This week, I'm doing things a little bit differently. I've been reading so much in the news regarding children who have been abused and murdered, and I feel like there are so many children's stories to share, but I don't really have enough time to cover them all individually. So today I'm going to be covering some of the cases I've been following in the news over the past couple of weeks that you should know about. Before we dig in, just know that this is barely even scratching the surface. So maybe in the future, I'm going to be combining more cases, letting you know about more things that are currently in the news and happening. Not 100% sure, but for now, let's dig in. Nearly a year after the death of 6-year-old Corey Micciolo, the father, Christopher Greger, 29 years old, was first arrested on child endangerment charges and is now accused of 1 count of murder. The charges were upgraded to murder after reviewing of surveillance footage was done, which was taken on March 20th of last year and was provided by the Atlantic Heights Clubhouse, which is a fitness center. The footage revealed Christopher, the dad, continue to increase the speed on the treadmill, despite Corey, 6 years old, continuing to fall and struggling to keep up. At one point, Christopher bites Corey on the head as he forcefully puts him back onto the treadmill. Christopher had been forcing Corey to run on a treadmill to lose weight. Corey came home to his mom and told her about what happened at the fitness center, and she reported the abuse to the New Jersey Division of Child Protection and Permanency. On April 1st of last year, Corey was able to tell caseworkers that his dad had continued to put him on the treadmill and forced him to run, telling the little boy that he was too fat. Corey was dead the next day. He died on April 2nd of 2021 due to blunt force trauma to his abdomen and chest. His death occurred 13 days after the incident at the Atlantic Heights Clubhouse. He passed away at the Southern Ocean Medical Center in Manahawkin area of Stafford Township, which is in New Jersey, specifically more like Monroe in Middlesex County. Brianna Micciolo, mother of 6-year-old Corey, said that the day he passed away, I dropped him off at his father's, perfectly healthy and happy, and 6 hours later, he is gone with no explanation. The boy's mother previously wrote on a private Facebook page, according to the Asbury Park Press. The investigation was thorough. There were at least 5 different law enforcement agencies involved, and Christopher, the father, was arrested March 9th of 2022. He hasn't entered a plea deal for the charges yet, or a plea for the charges, and the bail amount has not been released yet. I'll just keep looking and seeing what gets updated on this case. Next up, this week out of Alabama, Valerie Lynn Whitehead, who is 30 years old. She is from Valley, Alabama. She was arrested on March 15th in relation to a child abuse case. Whitehead was a kindergarten teacher at W.O. Lance Elementary School in Lanett, Alabama. During a Children's Advocacy Center interview, there were allegations made against Whitehead, but no other details have been released yet. Because of the age of the victim, there may not be any more news that gets released about this case. But if I find anything else out, or if you hear anything, by all means, post and comment and all that stuff so that we know what's going on in relation to this case. But, when you're talking about this, she was a kindergarten teacher, and, it is related to her work. It involves the abuse of very, very small children. So I don't know. I would like to learn more about this, but at the moment, this is all I know. In Louisiana, on March 11th, the family of Kaylen Johnson requested a welfare check be performed because they hadn't heard from her or her son since March 5th. Kaylen's car was found by law enforcement with the license plate missing, which raised more concerns that foul play was involved here. 20-year-old Brennan Murphy turned himself in on March 14th after refusing to initially cooperate with law enforcement in relation to the missing person reports filed for his girlfriend, Kaylen Johnson, and her 2-year-old son, Kaden Johnson. Murphy has now confessed to killing both Kaylen and Kaden and led the police to where both bodies had been disposed. After shooting her multiple times in the parking lot of his apartment complex, he stuffed Kaylen's body into a trash bag and drove to a secluded area where he disposed of her body and the murder weapon in a drainage ditch. Kaylen was 6 months pregnant at the time of her murder. Kaylen's 2-year-old son, Kaden, was in Murphy's car while all of this transpired. Then Murphy drove to a bridge where he threw little Kaden over the edge. As he drove away, Murphy recalls hearing the little boy crying. The autopsy report for little Kaden reveals that he died of hypothermia. In addition to the 2 first-degree murder charges being brought against Murphy, the courts are also pursuing feticide charges for Kaylen's unborn baby. Murphy is currently being held with no bond, and he was also transferred from the East Baton Rouge Parish Prison, what a tongue twister, to the West Baton Rouge Parish Prison for Murphy's safety. I'm not going to say I'm a huge fan of prison justice, but I will also not say that it is not deserved in this case either. At the very young age of 20, Murphy has killed his girlfriend, his non-biological child, and his own unborn child. We still don't have any information yet on why he killed them. Next, in Las Vegas, General Oglesby, who's 33 years old, was arrested after police were called to his apartment, where they found his 5-year-old son dead earlier this week. According to Oglesby, the 5-year-old was watching a TV show that he wasn't allowed to watch, and then he talked back, which is when Oglesby started whipping his son with a cable box cord. The little child's chin was split open by the cord. Oglesby beat the child again later that night when the boy didn't want to go to bed. He whipped the boy and beat him in the stomach while holding a slipper. He reports that he realized he hit the boy too hard because the boy was acting strange and laid down. He didn't want to call for help because he claimed that law enforcement would not understand his method of discipline. And let me pause there and just remind you all that this is not discipline. This is torture and abuse. Abuse the boy had most likely been receiving throughout his short 5-year lifetime. Oglesby tried to perform CPR on the boy, but when realizing he was dead, texted the boy's mother a couple of good pictures from his phone, whatever that means. I don't know if that means pictures of himself or the boy when the boy was alive, but then he texted his sister to tell her that the boy had died because he had whipped him too hard. Interestingly, the police report reveals that Oglesby waited 13 minutes after the boy had stopped breathing to call 911. When emergency dispatch told him to perform CPR, he refused, stating that he had already tried it. A neighbor reported to police that she'd heard a lot of noise coming from the apartment, which sounded like a body being thrown around. But guess what? She didn't call police. She knocked on the apartment door, Oglesby apartment door, got no response, and then went back to her apartment. I don't believe for 1 second that she didn't hear the father yelling or the son crying or sounds of struggle or something to indicate to her that something terrible was happening. I mean, in this case, the only reason the cops came here in the first place was because Oglesby called them. He had apparently gotten custody of his son, who we don't know his name, just know that he was just really, really tiny, 5 years old, that he'd gotten custody of him last February, and he basically admitted to beating his son from that point on. Oglesby is going to be back in court on March 21st, so I'm going to kind of circle back around to this later, but I don't know what else happened in that poor boy's life to where, the father would be given complete custody of his son versus the mother. So this little boy most likely had a terribly sad life from the get-go, and he probably never knew what real love felt like. And I mean, I don't want to make everybody feel extra depressed, but it's like you think of 5 years of absolute misery and you're young and you're growing, and of course you're going to talk back, or you're going to, I don't know, you're not going to be perfect. No child is perfect, but no child deserves to be beaten with a cord for watching something he's not supposed to watch. But also in depressing news this week, child abuse cases are on the rise in the state of Nebraska. According to an article by KSNB Local 4 News, in only a decade, the number of forensic child abuse-related interviews have more than doubled. There was another spike in reported cases between 2020 and 2021, where the First Light Advocacy Center interviewed 317 children, with 75% of those being sexual assault cases. The Advocacy Center believes the numbers are even higher than what is being reported due to factors induced by the pandemic. I personally agree with this consensus, and I believe it'll be years before we know even a rough estimate of how much abuse and domestic violence, how much both of those went up during COVID. Sharon Krexy, who is the First Light executive director, is quoted by KSNB News as saying, "I think a lot of it is that the community doesn't even know that we exist or that these problems exist." She also says there's no race, gender, or socioeconomic level that it discriminates against. So I think that awareness is key. And I think awareness and speaking up if you know something or see something will hopefully move toward prevention. She also added that signs of child abuse include changes in behavior, sexually acting out, and physical appearances such as bruises. I know that this problem of, increased reports of abuse and neglect are not unique to Nebraska, but something the entire United States needs to, reconcile with now. Just to prove this point, consider the new bill that was just passed in New Mexico. KRQE News reports that the governor has signed a bill that will strengthen legal representation to children, parents, and guardians in child abuse and neglect cases. Currently, the law does require courts to appoint attorneys, but with 1,900 cases reported in just the last year, there just aren't enough attorneys to go around. The articles also revealed that House Bill 46 will create an independent office to oversee the process, hiring and contracting more attorneys. Representative Gail Chasey, who has worked as a court-appointed attorney in these cases, was one of the sponsors. She says a big part of this is also more social workers who can help the families to achieve stability and safety sooner, or for children who need to go live with other family members to help the families stabilize sooner and reduce trauma children are experiencing now in the system, says Representative Chasey. Funding for the new office will come from more than $6 million allocated by the legislature for court-appointed attorneys. So, with not enough attorneys or social workers to go around to handle the volume of abuse taking place, the state of New Mexico feels the most important issue to tackle is making sure there are more attorneys available to provide legal representation instead of focusing on strengthening and improving the reach of CPS to better protect children in these situations. To me, personally, this is kind of indicative of what's going wrong here. We are not focusing on the correct thing as a nation. We need to be focusing on laws that will make children safer, not just ensure legal counsel when and if it makes it to court. I believe that we have to continue to educate ourselves and the public around us about the dangers facing children every day in our very own communities. We need to empower and encourage each other to look out for signs of abuse, and when in doubt, call the Division of Child Welfare. They're there to help children and their families. It's not a witch hunt. They're not going to take the kids away. They're going to be able to look into it and figure out what's really going on. But the most important part is that you call, is that you do your part, and just in case, you never know. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe you're 100% right. Just call and just let them know your concerns, what you've seen, and this is going to go a long way. We should be better in our own communities of noticing when something is off or if we should say something. It is your problem. So when in doubt, just call. For Colorado specifically, I know that you would need to call 1-844-CO for kids. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I urge you all to donate or join local causes in your communities that are working to fight for better children's rights. If you don't know where to start, please visit our website for resources and click on the donate page where I've provided links to some of my favorite child advocacy programs, such as End CAN, which is End Child Abuse Now, and the Coalition for Responsible Home Education. It's all of our responsibilities to stand up for the rights and lives of children everywhere. This is a fight that has nothing to do with partisan politics, simply the right for all children to be safe, loved, and cared for. Thank you, and join the family.